If I had a nickel for every time Lisa roared through my driveway like it was her personal speedway, I'd have enough to dig a moat, and honestly, that might have been less chaotic than what I ended up doing. Picture this. I'm out front, sipping my third cup of black coffee, my dog lounging on the porch, birds chirping, when I hear the growl of a white SUV. It doesn't slow, doesn't hesitate, it just barrels over the corner of my driveway, spitting gravel and grinding another layer off my curb like Lisa's got a vendetta against geometry. She doesn't wave. She smirks, that over-polished face peering through giant sunglasses like she's the ruler of some suburban empire, and I'm just a peasant on her way to the grocery store. I used to think driveway drama was the kind of petty nonsense you'd see in viral social media rants or hear from busybody neighbors with too much time on their hands. Then Lisa came along, or rather, Lisa met my property line and decided it didn't exist. At first, I chalked it up to a fluke. Maybe she misjudged the turn once, twice. By the fourth time, I knew this wasn't bad drive wine, it was arrogance on four wheels. She turned my driveway into her personal shortcut, slicing across the edge from her cul-de-sac to the main road, saving herself a grand total of 37 seconds on her daily errands. 37 seconds she didn't earn, but I paid for in spades: me chipped curb, my cracked concrete, my dog Buster nearly getting clipped on his afternoon stroll. The breaking point wasn't even the noise or the constant risk of becoming roadkill in my own yard. It was the day she plowed through while I was unloading mulch, toppling my wheelbarrow without so much as a tap on the brakes. She just sped off with a honk, like I was the fool for daring to be in her path. I stood there, mulch scattered everywhere, Buster barking his head off, and it hit me. This wasn't just about a driveway. It was about boundaries, and Lisa was the walking, driving proof of what happens when people stop driving a damn about them. I'm no stranger to conflict. I've spent 40 years wrangling wildlife, rescuing animals, getting bitten, sprayed, kicked, and drenched by every critter from here to the Rockies. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for HOA battles. Because Lisa wasn't just a neighbor, she was the VYC president of the Homeowners Association. That's right, the woman who treated my property like her personal express lane was also the self-proclaimed guardian of neighborhood standards. She once fined a kid for hanging a hammock too suggestively between two trees. That's the level of absurdity I was up against. So, like any sane person, I filed a complaint. I documented her drive-bys with time-stamped photos, mapped out her shortcut versus the proper route, even sketched a little diagram for the board. Their response? A bureaucratic brush-off. Due to shared ingress designations in community easement zones, the area in question may fall under communal transit jurisdiction. Translation: tough luck. According to them, my driveway, which I'd poured with my own cash, maintained for 2 decades, and sealed by hand every spring, was now a vaguely defined shared access route. I demanded to see the rule. Lisa whipped out a binder thicker than a phone book, flipped to a laminated page, and read it like she was summoning spirits. In accordance with bylaw 4.3.1 b, ingress through adjacent property space may be executed when deemed efficient for communal travel. Efficient. Like my yard was a logistics problem she'd optimized. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You know what else is efficient? Not having neighbors." She laughed, actually laughed, and replied, "Well, if you don't want people using it, maybe you should make it less convenient." That line stuck with me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat out back with Buster, replaying the security footage of her SUV zipping through. Same angle, same smug grin. I thought about my late wife, who used to say, "Fences keep honest people honest, but skunks keep everyone honest." She loved the misunderstood critters, the stinkier the better. We once fostered 3 rescue skunks after a petting zoo shut down little bundles of stripes and sass. They'd waddle around like kings, leaving a trail of respect in their wake. You didn't mess with the skunks. You gave them space. You respected their turf. The next morning, I found fresh tire marks right over a bag of topsoil I'd left out. She didn't even stop to say sorry. That's when I knew it was war. Not the angry kind. Anger gets you lawyers. Strategy gets you results. So I smiled, turned around, and got to work. First, I marked every tire track with bright pink chalk. By noon, my driveway looked like a scoreboard of disrespect, 12 lines total. Then I made a sign, "Smile, Lisa, you're on camera," and rigged it with a motion light. Neighbors started noticing. Cars slowed down. One kid asked if I was starting a vlog. I wasn't, but I was cooking up something viral. That week, Lisa zoomed through at top speed, honked twice, and tossed a half-wave like she owned the place. That night, as Buster snoozed at my feet and the porch light flicked on, I called an old wildlife buddy who owed me a favor. He just so happened to need a temporary home for 3 non-aggressive rescue skunks. When I told him my plan, he paused, then said, "Dan, you're really doing this, huh?" I cracked open a root beer and grinned. "I'm not just doing it. I'm taking my damn driveway back." By morning, the neighborhood Facebook group was buzzing. Someone snapped a pic of my pink tally driveway and captioned it, "Dan's counting crimes." Comments poured in. "Is that Lisa's SUV again? I thought that was a walking path. Go, Dan." I didn't post a thing. The internet did the work, turning petty revenge into a community spectacle. One neighbor offered cones, another suggested thorn bushes, but nobody knew the real plan yet. Lisa didn't like the spotlight. That afternoon, she cruised by slower, eyeing the camera I'd mounted. Buster stood by me, tail up, staring her down. She didn't wave, just drove off, lips tight like she'd swallowed a sour grape. An hour later, I found a letter crammed in my mailbox, no stamp, just an HOA printout. "You are hereby summoned to a neighborhood conduct review hearing to address recent community disruptions. Location, your property. Date, tomorrow. Time, 4 p.m. Attendance mandatory." They were holding the HOA meeting in my front yard. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Lisa was clever. She knew I'd skip it on her turf, but on mine, I'd have to show up or risk a fine for not stepping out my own door. I spent the day prepping. I set up 2 lawn chairs, a table with popcorn and lemonade, and a spot for Buster. I laid out a red checkered blanket and made a sign, "HOA Circus, 1 day only, no refunds." At 4 p.m., the neighborhood brass arrived like they were judging a bake-off. Lisa rocked a coral pantsuit and heels that sank into my grass, toting 3 color-coded folders and a presentation clicker. Behind her was Greg, the HOA president, a guy who once threatened to fine me for a ladder VY Seibel from the street. He wore a blazer and the blank stare of a man who'd peaked in middle management. "Thank you, Mr. Carter, for hosting this important discussion," Greg said, forcing a smile. I raised my lemonade. "Always a pleasure, Greg. I love a good ambush dressed up as democracy." Lisa dove into her slideshow, Google Maps, traffic diagrams, stock photos of efficient suburban flow. She called my driveway a communal ingress point and quoted bylaws like gospel. According to bylaw 4.3.1b, when a property corner abuts the curvature of a shared access cul-de-sac. I cut in, "Lisa, are you justifying trespassing with math?" She ignored me. Greg cleared his throat and read from a script. "It is the opinion of this HOA that Mr. Carter's driveway serves, intentionally or not, as an efficiency route for multiple residents, and thus cannot be unreasonably obstructed." I stared at them. "So, because it's convenient, it's not mine anymore?" Lisa flashed her teeth. "We're not saying that, Dan. We're saying it belongs to everyone." That was a line that turned annoyance into absurdity. I stood, Buster rising with me. "In that case, I'll set up a toll booth. $2 a tire, half off if you honk first." Lisa's smile wavered. Greg looked like he might actually consider it. I leaned in, letting the sarcasm drip. "Or maybe I'll turn it into a duck pond. Efficient for ducks." The meeting ended with no decision, just snarky remarks. Lisa threatened to call the county. Greg muttered about rezoning. I didn't care. I was watching Buster sniff the driveway's edge, tail twitching. That night, I sketched a habitat layout. Rocks here, mulch there, a log on the east side, a shady nook for resting. At the top, I wrote 3 names, Mo, Curly, and Lola. The next morning, my wildlife buddy dropped off supplies, fencing, cedar mulch, scent chips, a solar fountain. To most, it looked like landscaping. To those in the know, it was prep. I worked all day, whistling as I laid bricks and adjusted the camera. Lisa strolled by once, squinting at the changes. "Spring cleanup?" she asked, syrupy sweet. "Just making things less convenient." I shot back without looking up. She hesitated, then marched off. That night, an HOA letter arrived, threatening fines for unapproved construction. I laughed. The skunk habitat wasn't a structure, just nature. And if nature came with a whiff that outdid Lisa's perfume, who was I to argue? The emotional weight hit later. I sat out front with Buster, staring at the driveway where my wife used to park. She backed in slow, careful not to crush the flowers. She'd have loved this fight, not the drama, but the principle. It wasn't about pavement. It was about not letting someone like Lisa trample your life because it's quicker than going around. I scratched Buster's ears and whispered, "Tomorrow, we make it official." He licked my hand and settled down. Somewhere in the distance, an SUV revved. I smiled in the dark. Let the skunk games begin.